Hello everyone, this is part 48 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Neji raised his hand to deliver the first signal to his comrades. Choji collected the cards from Hinata and Ino, grimacing when he saw his girlfriend's hand. And then he slipped them back into the box. Naruto folded over the corner of the page in his book, and returned the paperback to his backpack. The bus was nearly empty. Aside from the 6 shinobi, the only other passenger was a single drunken tourist. And the driver was an ancient woman with thick glasses, who had not even seemed to notice when they had entered the transport. Neji gave the second sign, and an instant later the bus rumbled down the compacted earth road, its operator blissfully unaware that her vehicle had just lost a half-dozen riders. The 6 teens landed in the lush wheat field without disturbing a single plant. Though war had ravaged the major cities of the land of grass, the farmlands that contributed to the nation's name had been carefully avoided by both sides. Even without a binding accord, all parties to the conflict agreed that controlling the country was meaningless if they destroyed the nation's income and food supply. The Leaf Shinobi quickly changed clothing. None of them had brought the normal uniforms or any weapons, in case the bags were searched. Instead, each ninja had brought a pair of black or dark navy jeans, and a black or dark gray lycra t-shirt. The clothing was inconspicuous enough pass inspection, but their choices were high quality, heavyweight fabrics that would provide modest protection and stealth. Each also tied on a pair of black, high-performance athletic sneakers, in place of the more casual footwear they had worn on the trip. In the end, none of the pieces of their outfits individually suggested the wearer was a shinobi, but taken together the intent was fairly clear, if just murky enough that they might have been able to talk their way out of trouble. Though the next actions would remove even that doubt. Kitsune, Ginmaki, Naruto and Hinata call forth their weapons. Uzumaki tucked his head and left arm through the bandolier strap on the staff blade scabbard, and his fiancée strapped her coat into position over her uncovered forearms. Weapon summoning jutsu, despite using the standard name, Tenten did not summon a distinct weapon. Instead, her 2 scrolls appear before her. The Jonin caught them both, and clipped one onto her belt, resting against her left leg. That freed up her hand to unfurl the second parchment. She drew forth 10 pouches of shurikens and tossed 2 to each of her allies. Then she provided Neji, Ino, and Choji with 3 kunai, each. After she completed her friend's equipment, Tenten wound her storage scroll back up, and secured it over her right hip. The hidden grass hideout the Kazekage identified is approximately 40 kilometers southwest of here, Neji reminded them. Our priority is stealth. We do not want them to be alerted to our presence and have the chance to prepare the defenses, or to attempt to move the hostages. He restated the final word, reinforcing the fact that Nyoko Honokata was not the only person they would be rescuing. Aran Ishigami, the 9-year-old son of the Earth Daimyo, was also being held by Namikaze's men, and the teens did not intend to leave him behind, even if it meant additional layers of complication for their already illegal mission. Let's get going, Ino said darkly. I don't want my friend spending another night in that hellhole. The blue Shozoku never even flinched, as Hinata placed her left palm on his back over his heart, and stabbed the first 2 fingers of her right hand into his throat. His heart and voice were both shut down before he was ever aware of the kunoiki's presence. He died without a sound, and Hinata lowered him just as silently into the grain stalks. If someone found him, and was not an expert medical shinobi, it would just look like a heart attack. Aren't you gonna douse him? Naruto whispered anxiously. He is not wired with paper bombs, she shook her head. I wonder why not, Choji pondered. Probably so they don't put the hostages at risk, Tenten decided. That works out better for us, Choji noted. But when he noticed the uncertain looks on his friends' faces, he added, doesn't it? Not if it means they are expecting us, Hinata said dubiously. It could also simply be that not all of the Shizokas are forced to obliterate themselves on death, Neji counted thoughtfully. After all, there were no reports of this before the battles in the grass and waterfall countries started. None of the bandit Shizukas, who were killed before the war, exploded. Maybe it's something they only do at war, Naruto suggested. I mean, if you're in the middle of a huge battle, the chance to take out your killer and his allies makes sense. But if you are guarding someone, or on some kind of stealth mission, suddenly blowing up would be a pretty stupid. Everyone except Hinata froze and stared at Naruto incredulously. But Neji's astonishment faded rapidly, and Hinata smiled proudly. That's. Tenten paused as she reviewed Uzumaki's suggestion. That's entirely plausible. You don't have to say it like that, the fox-faced young man frowned. We just didn't expect to hear something like that from you, Ino stated unapologetically. Hinata started to glare her friend, but her cousin spoke up first. Despite his normal demeanor, Naruto has always had a keen instinct for combat and tactics, the white-eyed Jonin asserted. Ah, thanks, Naruto said weakly in response to the backhand compliment. Then his face hardened, and he insisted, whatever's up with these guys, we don't have time to stand around here talking about it. True enough, their leader agreed, the longer we take, the better the chance someone will notice we did not return to the village on schedule. Let's keep moving. They paused when they were close enough for all 6 leaf warriors to see the geographical target. Along the way, the Hyuga cousins and Ino had silently dispatched another 5 of Guki's anonymous soldiers. Though none died in a way more obvious or suspicious than Hinata's first kill, the simple number of scouts they had to eliminate would raise suspicions when they were found, or did not return. So the rescuers had carefully increased their pace until they reached the kidnappers' hideout. The hellhole was a modestly lavish 2-story house, seemingly the home of a successful farmer or a country getaway for a lower-ranked noble. It appeared sturdy enough to withstand a heavy storm, but not enough to weather a concentrated assault. The fence was more for show or animal control, than for any sort of defense. The windows were wide, uncovered, and sported happy little flower boxes. Around the back side of the building, inside the fence there was a small variety of fruit trees, apples, pears, and even one cherry. The teens would have thought they had the wrong place, if not for the 6 Shizukas around the fence, 2 at the main gate and 1 more at each corner. And none of them wore green or tan, 5 were in blue and 1 of the pair at the entrance was in red. Neji indicated they should stop, and he and Hinata turned their activate Byakugan eyes on the building. There are 11 more inside, their leader noted, all but 2 are wearing stealth uniforms, so I cannot tell much about them aside from the obvious differences like height and gender. But the last 2 are in a room on the 2nd floor. They appear to be our targets, but again, I cannot be sure. That is Nyoko, Hinata said firmly, it is not someone using a transformation or genjutsu. Also her chakra network is the same, and I have never seen a jutsu that can imitate tenketsu, so I don't think it is a stand-in. But I've never seen the Earth Prince in person before, so I can't guarantee it is him. But the boy with Nyoko is also not having his appearance altered by any ninja technique I can detect, either. So 15 Shizukas and 2 hostages, Naruto muttered, that's 2.5 each. We can do that. I say we just charge in there and take them out. Do not forget, according to the information the Sand provided, one of them is some sort of elite soldier, Neji reminded his hasty junior, and all of them are blue or higher rank, so it will not be that easy. If we just go charging in there, what's to prevent the ones inside from using Nyoko and Ishigami OG as human shields? Ino added more scathingly. Okay, so what are we going to do then? Uzumaki counted softly. Neji considered that for a moment, and then reached into his backpack and withdrew a pamphlet from the first resort they had visited. The Jonin glanced over the brochure, and nodded in satisfaction. He knelt down, and spread the laminated page over the ground. Hinata, I need to borrow you eyes, he requested, as he began to slowly sign. Of course, my brother, she answered, her hands flying through the seals before she announced, Karaname Jutsu. Neji deactivated his Byakugan and closed his eyes, as he began to use his cousin's wider, sharper field of vision. He completed his signs, and held his hands, palm down over the promotional paper. Ninja art, Sumi Funsha Jutsu, he proclaimed, sending his chakra down to the pamphlet. The colors on the advertisement began to blur and drift across the page, settling into new images and words. The others all crowded around loosely, and presently they all recognized the farmhouse as it emerged from the ink cloud into a picture that looked like a photograph. Another section of the brochure became an overhead map of the area, indicating the directions from the closest town, down the roads, through the fields, pastures, and one small stand of trees, before finally leading up the road to the building they were targeting. One part cleared into black text on a white background, extolling the virtues of wheat winds in. Neji even crafted some photographs of interior decor of the grass safe house. Finally, the elder Hyuga exhaled in release as he ended the jutsu. He examined both sides of the altered pamphlet, and appeared pleased by the results. That's great, Neji, Ino noted, I've never seen such realistic interpretations. If I hadn't seen you do it, I would think those really were professional photos of this place. That is the idea, their leader nodded, before handing the advertisement to the blonde woman. You and Choji will provide a distraction. Circle around to the path, and approach openly. Play the role of tourists, be loud, demanding, and moderately aggressive, do not show any fear. Try to draw the others out of the building. Instill confusion in them, so much as you can. And what happens if they don't buy it? Naruto asked. In that case, or simply if they do not react sufficiently to Ino and Choji's intrusion, you and Hinata will be on hand to back him up in combat. The Jonin smirked. Either way, Tenten and I will use that advantage to sneak in. He lowered his voice, and the teens all moved in closer while he explained his full plan, including where he and Tenten would strike, so the others could help them draw attention away from that point, and also where Hinata and Naruto should position themselves. Okay, Ino sighed when Neji finished, I guess that means we need to change again. So if you could all turn around. Neji, Hinata, and Naruto all complied immediately, but Tenten shook her head at inconsistent Chunin before looking away, as well. Yamanaka swapped her faux uniform for a simple sundress, dark blue, and just long enough to cover the shuriken pouches after she strapped them to her upper thighs. Choji did not disrobe, he simply took out a bright, loud, floral print shirt and put it on over his t-shirt, buttoning it but not tucking it in. Okay, 2 more things before we can go, Ino decided. She took a bottle of juice and poured it over her head, before using a pair of jutsu to bond the color to her hair and eliminate any lingering odor. The false coloring would not last past her next shower, but it gave her locks a temporary and convincing red hue. She then extracted a compact, and turned to her lover. Come here, Choji, and hold still, she instructed. Akamaiki frowned and complied, and the others all looked confused. Ino patted down his face with her concealer, covering up the swirls on his cheeks. Is this really necessary? The big Tokujo asked despondently, looking to Naruto and Neji for help. But neither interceded. These aren't civilians, Ino explained, they are wannabe ninjas. So there is a good chance they could recognize your clan markings. The others nodded their agreement, and the hefty shinobi sighed in defeat. Nagato, Guki called out gently, not wanting to take his subordinate's attention away from the paths of pain at an inopportune moment. But the younger man's unique blue orbs snapped open, and regarded his sensei wearily. I apologize if I am interrupting, Namikaze stated clearly, but I need an update on the status of the attack on the Hidden Rain village. We are doing well, the Rinnegan user answered, slurring the words slightly. As you expected, the appearance of my Deva self has caused panic among the Rain shinobi. Many have fled, or even defected. But so far, they have managed to plug the gaps in the defenses. Still, I do not expect they will be able to hold out for more than a week or 2. Good, the Raikage smiled. Thanks to Conan and Madara's efforts, we will be able to send troops to take the mines, rice paddies, and snow countries tomorrow. Are you sure we are not overextending ourselves, Master Guki? Conan asked as she slipped into the room she shared with Nagato. The Sound Village poses no threat, the Leaf Renegade insisted. Even before their little civil war, their main power was Orochimaru-sensei and his lieutenants, and they are all gone now. The Mines Village is key to the defensive of the Land of Lightning, but if they were to learn we are using Madara, they might just come out of their shell and attack us. And since I am not concerned about the Land of Silver's precious metals, we can attack the mines themselves, taking their legs out from under them. He paused with a slight frown. Only the Snow Village is a real threat. Their star has been on the rise since Daimyo Kiyuki returned, and that village has had a large number of genin graduates the last 3 years. But they are isolated, and their strongest ally has been taken out of the game. We might have to take some of our troops out of the grass and waterfall, but our grip over those countries has stabilized, and most of their surviving shinobi are now under our command. So we should have sufficient forces. The origami kunoichi nodded in acceptance, and he grinned broadly at them. Good. Then tomorrow, Phase 3 will begin. See, we found it, a brash, bossy voice carried past the bend in the compacted dirt road through the wheat field. That's what you said 3 hours ago, her long-suffering boyfriend countered. As they rounded the corner, the redhead and her hefty paramour were confronted by two mildly surprised individuals in full stealth gear. Look, there, I told you, the young woman gestured towards the house triumphantly, there it is. Finally, Ino groused at the Shizukas as she marched up, Choji trailing wearily behind her. She folded up the pamphlet, and slipped it back into her bag. The stupid bus let us out in the middle of nowhere, she complained to the guards, the driver said it was just a short walk. Short walk, Choji panted slightly, pretending to be out of breath. There are no signs on these dirt paths, and the map on the brochure didn't have any landmarks, she told the confused warriors, so it took us forever to find this place. But even if the directions had been clear, we still had to walk way too far. She wagged her finger at the blue-clad warrior, and added, and don't think I won't be talking to the manager about that. The Shizukas glanced back and forth between the two tourists, completely out of the depths. Ino started to tap her foot in annoyance, and glared at them. Well, if you aren't going to take our bags, at least get out of the way, she demanded. Sorry about my girl, Choji placed a hand on her shoulder to try to calm her, but we would just like to check in, so we can get cleaned up and sit for a while before dinner. My feet are killing me. I'm sorry, but you must have the wrong place. The red-garbed soldier told them, but his voice was highly uncertain of his statement. What? Ino shrieked in protest. Then she yanked out the doctored paper again, tore it slightly opening it, and stared darkly at the advertisement. No way, she shot back, brandishing the advertisement like a weapon, this is definitely the place. We never saw any other buildings like that, either on the bus or when we were wandering around looking for this place. The Crimson Guard took the brochure from her gingerly, and looked it over. Even though his face was covered, his body language told the leaf ninjas he was frowning in bewilderment. Why don't we just kill them? The blue Shozaku finally spoke, not trying to prevent them from hearing him. They are civilians, the Red Guard asserted, as if that explained everything. The other warrior groaned in annoyance, and took a step back. Is this how you treat all your guests? The disguised kunoichi snapped at them. Ino, maybe we should calm down a little, Choji insisted, and her blue eyes flashed in genuine anger. Ino, why should I? The red Shozaku started to say something, but stopped when the young woman whirled around and punched her paramour in the arm. I've told you not to call me that, she snapped, and then grumbled, seriously, what kind of boyfriend gives you a nickname based on your family name instead of your given name? She took a breath, and turned her attention back to the guards. Listen, could you just call the manager and let him know Kikoku Inoue and Masami Kikuchi are here? She asked more politely of the Shozaku, her anger have been diverted to her boyfriend, we reserved a room for the long weekend. Kikoku Inoue. The blue Shozaku spoke again, sounding surprised, like the famous voice actress from a few years. I wish, Ino laughed dismissively, channeling her real annoyance that he had recognized the name into her words, but I couldn't be her, she's been in the business for more than 2 decades, and I'm only 17 years old. You can't believe how much she hates that, Choji added in mock dismay, now I'm probably going to hear about it all night. Why did my parents have to name me that? Don't they know how embarrassing it is? Ino glowered at him again, but this time it was just an act. Meanwhile the higher-ranked guard had given in, he took out a small walkie-talkie, and depressed the button. Captain, you had better come out here, he announced, his voice wavering, we have, guests. What was that, Lieutenant? An equally shocked voice emerged from the device. 2 guests, Kikoku Inoue and Masami Kikuchi, right. They just arrived and want to check in, the red Shozaku confirmed. We have reservations, Ino shouted at the radio. I'll be right out, the other soldier confirmed. Neji saw the renegades inside the house shift, and a number of them moved closer to the door. The warrior who was supposed to be guarding the southwest corner of the fence had drifted north, to try to see what the commotion was in front of the house. As the Jonin had calculated, The soldiers were bored and easily distracted after spending 3 weeks in the middle of nowhere. The pair froze as a tree limb hanging over the fence above them creaked, and the leaves rustled. Tenten glanced up, but there was no one there. As the guard did not react either, she decided it had just been the wind. Another gust swept through the tall grains, as if to confirm her deduction. Now, Neji signed, and he and Tenten cleared the fence in one leap. The misled guard briefly looked back, but by then the ninja couple had crouched between the lower, brick portion of the fence and a flowering pear tree. After the blue Shozaku returned to craning his neck to get a better view of the main gate, the leaf ninjas darted towards the house. A moment later, not one, but 4 additional Shizokis exited the building. The gray-clad soldier approached the gate, while the 3 blue mercenaries took up additional positions along the fence. As their commander approached, the red guard stood up straighter, and passed the ranking warrior Neji's falsified pamphlet. Inoue-san and Kikuchi-san claim that they have reservations for this weekend, the red Shozaku told his superior, trying to sound in control. That is entirely possible, the captain admitted smoothly. Then he addressed Ino and Choji directly. We don't actually work here, you see, he explained naturally, we are the bodyguards for, let's just say, some VIPs. They chose this in last minute to hold some secret negotiations. Its remote location makes it ideal, as you can imagine. To ensure their privacy, they rented the entire building. What kind of negotiations? Ino smirked as she asked, and the captain tilted his head as if smiling suggestively under the mask. Negotiations of a confidential and personal nature, the Grey Warrior noted glibly, sensing he was making headway. I'm sure you understand that I cannot say more. Stupid rich people, she shot back, but without any real venom, always throwing around money and making trouble for us normal people. The captain nodded, and Ino sighed in defeat. Choji had to struggle not to tense up at his lover's apparent acceptance of the lie. He was not sure they had bought Neji and Tenten anywhere near the amount of time they needed. But his worry was unfounded. Fine, Ino shrugged, I guess there is nothing we can do about it. Just get us a refund, and we'll leave. The grey Shozaku kept bobbing his head to try to keep her appeased, right up to the instant she uttered the word, refund. His head suddenly froze, and his 2 subordinates shuddered. What was that? The captain asked carefully, but with a vibe of danger. We put down a 1,000 ryo deposit. Ino's voice carried a similar edge, and it goes without saying that we want our money back. Deposits are non-refundable, the leader said harshly, and the red-clad lieutenant dropped his head, having expected his commander's reaction once money became an issue. Maybe not under normal circumstances, the fake red-headed countered firmly, but we didn't cancel here, we were bumped. And without adequate notification, I might add. I'm sure the innkeeper will be happy to reschedule your stay for another weekend, and apply your balance to that reservation. After snapping at her, the grey Shozaku suddenly seemed to remember the angle he had been playing, so he added weakly, he is quite accommodating. He sure was, for your fat cat clients. The undercover kunoiki was not deterred, but we came all the way out here, and now we have no place to stay and return tickets that aren't good for another 3 days. It's not like we are made of money. We are gonna need that 1,000 to either find another place to stay, or to pay for alternate transportation. And in that case, we would be out the price of our original bus tickets. She exhaled angrily, look, I don't even know why I'm talking about this with you. Can't you just get the owner out here? The owner is indisposed at the moment, the Shozaku leader backpedaled quickly, there was an incident, and the innkeeper is cleaning up. One of our clients is extremely fastidious. Almost germophobic. We'll wait, Ino said brightly yet sarcastically, crossing her arms in front of her ample chest. It's not like we have anywhere else to go. Even if we can't kill them, the aggressive guard in blue decided to offer his opinion again, we could knock them out and drag them to the nearby town. Choji pretended to prepare to run, but Ino just glared at the would-be murderer. That will be quite enough, Sergeant. The red Shozaku sounded like he shared Ino's opinion. The grey-clad captain regarded them carefully. He had been starting to wonder if they were con artists, but dismissed the idea. 1,000 ryo was hardly pocket change, but it wasn't worth coming out to such a remote location. Also, any real con would have negotiated at the threat of violence. And based on the layout, he fully expected the grass-safe house could have operated as an inn in the past, or even simply when it was not otherwise needed. The brochure looked real enough. All right, he bristled as he spoke, I will give you your money, if you will just leave. Our employers plan on an evening stroll soon, and if they see you. And what about you? Choji sounded concerned. Well, I will need you two to sign a voucher, so I can have the innkeeper reimburse me. The gray Shozaku's lie came out more sincerely than he expected. He reached into one of his uniform's many pockets, and drew out a small number of bills. Part of him screamed silently in protest, as he started counting off 150 Ryo notes. I'm really sorry to make you do this. Akamaki reached up and scratched his cheek in not entirely false dismay. That's whatever applaud the Shozaku was going to offer died in his throat as he looked at the large youth again. Ino's eyes widened as she realized her lover's errant gesture had scraped some of the makeup off his cheek, revealing the distinctive swirl at which their target was now staring. Honey, your scars, she tried to cover, but it was too late. Suten, scrubbing jutsu, the gray Shozaku snarled, signing once, and then jammed his money back into his pocket, while he pointed his other hand at them. The cleaning bubbles hit them softly, getting them only slightly wet, but removing the concealer from Choji's cheeks and the improvised tint from Ino's hair. He's an Akamaki, the Red Warrior proclaimed even as he reached for his weapons. I told you this wouldn't get us inside, Choji moaned as he discarded his outer shirt to gain clear access to the blade stored underneath. It was worth a try, she shot back, faking her anger again as they switched to the secondary plan. They're ninjas, the blue guard exclaimed in delight, already starting to sign. Choji Akamaki and Ino Yamanaka, the captain confirmed, we've been expecting you. Well, were you expecting this? Naruto roared as he leapt out of the cover of the wheat, swinging Kitsune overhand at the gray Shozaku's head. The captain easily dodged the attack, and kicked Naruto in the ribs as the younger man landed. The blue Shozaku launched a small lightning bolt at Ino, trying to capitalize on the dampness left by his superior, but Hinata intercepted it with her own gout of water. Yes, we were, the lead mercenary confirmed, as the Leaf Ninjas regrouped. Even after our master decided you were truly on vacation, we maintained our readiness for your attack. We're a Neji, Hyuga and Tenten. They stayed on the bus with some transformed shadow clones, to keep up the show, Hinata answered sincerely, and Naruto hoped Neji's estimate that they would not be missed for a few more hours was accurate. The other Shizuka's standing guard started to close in, but the gray-garbed leader waved them back. Original guards, hold your positions, and keep watch in case Hinata-san is lying, he ordered, triggering his radio so they could all hear him. The reinforcements who came out with me report to the front gate. And I want 2 more of the reserves out here, while the remaining 2 secure the hostages. 8 on 4. Naruto smirked, you must be pretty confident. The former Jinchuriki launched his left fist at the gray mask, while more subtly swinging his staff blade at the renegade's knee. The Shozaku stepped back, causing the low attack to miss, and brushed aside the punch. As he did, 2 more blue Shizukas exited the house, and the 3 he had brought with to reinforce the gaps in the watch surged forward as well. Lieutenant, hold off Akamaki-san, while I keep Uzumaki-san busy, the captain instructed, that way the sergeants can go after Ino-san and Hinata-san 3-on-1. Take 'em out first, and remember their powers. Partial expansion jutsu, Choji intoned. His right arm swung out, now as large as the rest of his body. His target was the red Shozaku, and if his aim proved true, he would knock his opponent into the one of the 4 blue Shizukas attacking Hinata. Iron Guard Jutsu, the Scarlet Kidnapper countered, crossing his forearms in front of his body. To Akamaki, it felt like he had punched the main gates of the Leaf Village, and the lieutenant only slid back a few inches. The moment Choji ceased applying force, Guki's agent drew his iron and bronze gladius, and stabbed at the Leaf Tokujo's shrinking fist. Choji pulled his hand back faster, but was unable to avoid a light cut to his middle and ring fingers. The heavy warrior investigated his injury, but decided it was not serious, and started plotting his next move. Metal clanged on metal as the gray Shozaku absorbed Kitsune's attacks on his own short blade. Naruto lashed out again, watching the strain in his opponent's arm as he absorbed the attack. He's not as strong as me, Uzumaki decided, but he's just as flexible and maybe a little bit quicker. And mostly, he's a lot better with the gladius than I would have expected. As if the illustrated the younger man's thoughts, the gray-garbed renegade twisted their linked blades around, knocking Kitsune wide while giving himself a shot at Naruto's gut. The blonde Tokujo twisted out of the way of the jab and transferred the momentum to his staff blade, aiming at the Shozaku's neck. But the masked kidnapper knocked the blow away with his left hand, revealing the climbing claw in his palm. Ninja art, quick change jutsu, Ino chanted, regretting the loss of her sundress as it shredded to make way for her stand-in uniform. She drew two of the kunai Tenten had provided her, and blocked the first Shozaku's strike, before kicking away the second blue-clad attacker. Yamanaka noticed, to her annoyance, that the sergeants were not obeying orders, only two were attacking her, while the other four surrounded Hinata. I might be the only chunin here, she growled internally, but I'll make them pay for underestimating me. She stuck the daggers back on her belt, and unleashed half the throwing stars in the pouch on her left leg. Only one of the two blue Shizukas took a hit from the half-dozen shurikens, and that was a light scratch on his left thigh. But her female opponent dodged completely. And the projectiles served the true purpose, buying Ino time and space to start signing. Rotation, Hinata pushed her four attackers away, but none was struck as firmly as she had been hoping. Instead, Guki's troops remembered their leader's warning, and were expecting her Byakugan techniques. And as the chakra dome faded, two of the Navy masked renegades were signing, and Hinata recognized the beginnings of fire release ninjutsu. Retreating was not an option, with the other two Shizukas waiting, their short swords at the ready. So, instead, Hinata stepped closer to the fire users, her own hands crafting a ninjutsu with far greater speed. Kaiten, fire streamers jutsu, the sergeants incanted, not quite in unison. Doton, stone barricade jutsu, Hinata pulled up a thick plane of rock and dirt between her and the flames, stopping the red, orange, and yellow comets, and scattering no small amount of the crops into the air. She briefly wondered how many loaves of bread could have been made from the wasted grain. The Hyuga Scion dismissed her regret, and turned back to face the two armed warriors, still carefully watch for the other Shizukas to move around or bring down her defensive wall. Neji and Tenten slipped past the blue Shozaku in the main room, deciding not to risk alerting the remaining two guards by killing her. The female renegade growled lightly, as she stared out the front window at the battle evolving outside. She was so caught up in the fights, and in her annoyance at being excluded, that she hadn't even noticed the shifting air when the Leaf Jonin pair had entered the room through the back window. The elder teens snuck up the stairs noiselessly. Having left the two blue-clad warriors on the first floor, they had only the last guard to deal with. As with the others, Neji's Byakugan could not make out the color of the uniform without normal visual contact, but from the way she held herself, he expected the last guard was at least a red-ranked Shozaku, if not another full gray. But unlike the others, her uniform appeared almost frayed around the edges, and the Hyuga Jonin wondered if that was indicative of the guard having more battle experience. As they advanced, he also took a closer look at the prisoners. Both Nyoko and the Earth Prince looked worried, but there was also a smug look of expectation on the Fire Princess's lips. Neither was secured, beyond being locked in the reinforced, windowless room. The Leaf Shinobi stopped on the last step, tensing. Unlike the others, the final guard was not distracted by Choji's team. She was crouching on her chair rather than sitting in it, her eyes facing the stairs. Her fingertips were touching, and her left arm rested against the door, daring them to try to open it without her noticing. You go first, hit her with kunai, Neji's hands told Tenten. I will be right behind you and neutralize her with gentle fist if that fails. The weapons expert nodded, taking 4 of the multi-purpose knives in each hand. Her lover focused his chakra into his fingertips, and nodded. The slender young woman darted around the corner into the wide hallway, unleashing her blades before she even got a good look at her opponent. As she did, she gasped in both surprise and fear. As Neji followed Tenten, and got a real look at their opponent, he understood his teammates' reaction. What Neji had thought was a fraying of their enemy's uniform, was instead the ends of cloth hanging off the knotted-together ninja headbands covering her body. In front of the guard's linked hands was a sphere of superheated air had deflected Tenten's kunai while melting them into slag. The guard stepped forward, thrusting her hands at them. Dual arts, sweltering wind, the reaper of ninjas hissed, transforming the sphere into a blustery column of heat. 8 trigrams, enfolding dome, Neji reacted, and the Byakugan art enclosed both of the lovers. Though the Hyuga's quick thinking saved them, much of the inferno still bled through the protective hemisphere, and both teens could feel their faces redden and blister. Not the Hyuga I was hoping for, the murderess summoned her trident, but I suppose you will do for an appetizer. The gray Shozaku slashed Naruto's uncovered forearm with his climbing spikes, while keeping Kitsune trapped against his shortsword. The leaf soldier forced his opponent back with a grunt, and glanced down at the shallow furrows in his flesh, even as they closed. Uzumaki blocked the next strike, and this time grabbed his opponent's wrist as he tried another claw swipe. The renegade tried to slip free, but Naruto held him fast and forced one edge of the double-bladed gladius perilously close to its user's neck. The Shozaku focused some chakra into his arm, and the buckle on his glove loosened. The captain slipped his hand out of his glove, surrendering his claw to free his limb. Ninja art, Shadow Sword Jutsu, the gray-clad warrior intoned, signing around the hilt of his weapon. As he lashed out again, a phantom blade appeared parallel to the physical gladius. Naruto parried again, cautiously angling his staff blade so it would catch both the real and the chakra sword. Any suspicions Uzumaki might have had that the second weapon was an illusion or distraction was dispelled when he felt the increased and spread apart pressure on Kitsune. Man, that's a cool jutsu, Naruto thought, imagining having two Kitsunes side by side. But his admiration quickly faded. Any advantage Uzumaki had possessed in physical power vanished, the twinned blades effectively doubling the Shozaku's muscle output. But at the same time, it did not slow the captain either. Naruto also had to be more careful blocking, making sure he caught both blades with every parry. The Leaf Tokujo was not certain if one blade would continue if he stopped the other, but he wasn't about to chance it either. Crap, Naruto vocalized his dismay when he realized that in between the attacks, the gray Shozaku was signing, slowly building a ninjutsu. The blonde youth started to act in kind, but he knew that the renegade had a head start. So he picked a simpler jutsu he had fully mastered years ago. Cyclone spikes, Naruto said quickly, and the Shozaku gasped slightly in amazement. Suten, water burst jutsu, the gray warrior unleashed his art before it was complete. The liquid explosion hit Uzumaki's darts, destroying them. But the tiny tornadoes tore apart the surface of the water and slowed it, so while Naruto was soaked, he was neither injured nor staggered by the jutsu. Kaiten Shuriken Jutsu, Ino announced when her 7 hand signs completed, launched 4 fiery shurikens at each of her enemies. She continued signing, and the next 7 more seals were the same, but for 1. She finished with Raiten Shuriken Jutsu. The first Shozaku dealt with the 8 energy throwing stars by cutting them from the air with his sword. But the other blue-garbed warrior dodged the flame projectiles, but was too off balance to fully avoid the second set, and took deep lightning hits to her right bicep and thigh. She whirled around, facing Ino as she signed. Ninja Arts, Ikkyoi Graft Jutsu. Ino grimaced as she heard that. The Ikkyoi Graft was a dangerous jutsu she had learned about in her lessons with Tsunade. The technique was an attempt to imitate Madara Uchiha's Sasori, but instead of banishing injuries into the future, it created a patch of false flesh to cover the injury. It prevented bleeding and pain, and allowed the user to function normally. But the wound was not truly healed, so any moderate or heavy activity would worsen the injury. And due to the technique, the ninja would not know. Yamanaka pushed down her pity and drew a kunai again to block a swipe the healthier Shozaku took at her with his gladius. The blonde Chunin also noted that she had been the most successful against her opponents so far, though her pride quickly melted into worry. Maybe I should try to destroy his mind, the mentalist Kunoiki considered, but we also need to try to keep them distracted from what's going on inside, so I can't kill them too quickly. Is that what the others are doing too? But Neji didn't order us to stall after the initial infiltration, and Naruto isn't the type to do that on his own. Ino shrugged internally. When she started to lace her fingers to activate her clan's psychic jutsu, the Shizokus both drew back and prepared to dodge. Choji extended his enlarged hands on either side of the red Shozaku, as if planning it crush him. The masked warrior crouched and held his sword parallel to his chest, preparing to dodge and strike back. But instead, Akamaiki curled his fingers into giant fists, and slammed them into the turf, also channeling some earth chakra down his arms. The ground beneath the Shozaku bucked wildly, and he grabbed the grains around him with his empty hand to avoid being thrown into the air. The stalks were ripped free, but the lieutenant maintained his balance. The crimson-garbed renegade rolled to the side, throwing his weight behind his blade as he jabbed at the leaf ninja's wrist. Choji spun his whole body, swinging his endangered limb away from his opponent, while his other hand flew toward the rogue's back. As he watched his target fly away, the Shozaku appeared to anticipate the large shinobi's action, and he flipped backwards over Choji's arm. He lowered his blade weakly, and scored a light cut on the back of Choji's attacking hand. Ow! Choji grunted, shrinking his forelimbs back to their regular size. Okay, need to either play more defensive, or fight him at long range. And range isn't really my thing. Doton, dust 'em up jutsu. A layer of dirt, clay, and pebbles surrounded Akamiki's hands, enslaved to his will. He slammed his fists together experimentally, and then grinned at the Shozaku. Partial expansion jutsu, he announced again, launching a left cross at his opponent. The red Shozaku's gladius flashed up, but the earthen gauntlet expanded along with Choji's fist, and the blade only gouged the jutsu-bound material. Instead, the scarlet soldier was knocked back heavily by the weighty strike, and he partially disappeared into the wheat field. Undeterred, he darted back out a second later, placing his left hand over his sword's crosspiece. Suten, cleansing jutsu, the lieutenant channeled the earth jutsu negating technique into his sword, and the gladius took on a noticeable blue hue. Hinata gracefully ducked under a beam of fire, and slid around a lance of electricity. Her four enemies were playing it safe, keeping outside the range of her Byakugan arts, and pelting her with fire and lightning jutsu. She could have stopped some of the weaker or denser fire attacks with her 8 trigrams heavenly spin or one its variants, but that would have locked her in place for one of their other shots to hit. So she kept dodging, her superior speed and flexibility keeping her safe while she crafted the hand seals for her counterattack. She dove over a fire trace jutsu, recognizing that they were trying to hurt her. But the Shizokus did not realize Hinata was the one moving herself into position. Doton, stone surge jutsu, she incanted, pulling down almost half of the wall she had created earlier, and throwing the material at the 4 sergeants. 2 of the blue-garbed warriors managed to enact hasty jutsus to protect themselves. And the one closest to boundary of her attack managed to roll desperately out of the way. But the last was unable to complete his counter-jutsu in time, and took 2 large stones to the head and 1 to the chest. Before Hinata could capitalize further on her success, her head suddenly snapped up, and she turned her head towards what her Byakugan had already seen. Tenten interposed her Ziphos and Wakizashi between the tines of the trident, holding the Reaper back. The hall was wide for the style and size of the building, but was still too narrow for a proper duel of arms. So the weapon mistress had chosen the 2 curved short blades instead of a single larger weapon. She was surprised the Reaper had elected to use the 3-pronged spear Hinata had described from their last confrontation, but the older woman wielded her pole weapon with undeniable skill, relying mainly on thrusts but occasionally mixing in broader swings, if not at full extension. The Leaf Jonin couple had adapted one of the preferred leaf fighting styles for close-quarters combat. Tenten held the forward position with melee attacks, while Neji stayed back and fought their opponent with jutsu. So far, they had been moderately successful. Tenten had kept the trident from hitting either of them, while Neji had stopped most of the Reaper's jutsu, though one lightning technique had grazed the Leaf Kunoiki's left foot, numbing it. Unfortunately, neither of the Jonin had been able to score a hit on the guard. So, you are working for Guki Namikaze now? Neji asked sardonically. For someone with the stated intent of killing all shinobi, you certainly seem to like to throw your lot in with the more unsavory members of my profession. That did not work for Hinata when I was more mentally unbalanced. The Reaper shrugged as she tried to twist the wakizashi out of Tenten's right hand. Why would you think it would work now? I do have a greater talent for sarcastic mockery than my sister cousin does. Neji also bobbed his shoulders neutrally. Wait, you're saying you're sane now? Tenten prompted dubiously. The Reaper succeeded in knocking her primary weapon loose, so the borderline ambidextrous kunoiki juggled her Ziphos to her right hand and as it fell caught the wakizashi in her left. Only a fool or madman thinks he is sane. The unnamed woman drew her hands together on the haft of her weapon, to start signing, but I no longer believe the lies I concocted to distract my enemies and tools are true, nor do I let my rage rule my actions. Guki-san was quite helpful in that respect. And when he succeeds, my goal will have been met as well. The current classification of ninja will be no more. Tenten could not help but notice that the Reaper, who had been well matched one-on-one with Naruto and Hinata during the previous encounters, was now fighting the Neji and herself of them on even terms. The single-named team knew it was in part due to the limitations of the fight. She and Neji had to be wary of each other in the comparatively narrow space, and also had to consider the hostages in their actions. She is much stronger than our reports indicated. Neji's words reflected his fiancée's thoughts. He deflected a set of wind blades with another enfolding dome. The Reaper followed quickly with a trio of quick stabs, angling them past the slender young woman to try to strike the Hyuga Jonin. Tenten was on the ball, and deflected all of the attacks. The other advantage of working alongside Guki-san, the Reaper responded, you could call me the prototype for the Shizokus. I was the first to undergo the treatment, and as one of Namikaze-san's generals I was given a more comprehensive enhancement than the rank-and-file soldiers. The rogue shuddered slight, noting, that method might be painful and risky for the weak, but it is undeniably effective. I should have more than enough to deal with a pair of low-rank Jonin, she added, pushing Tenten into Neji when their weapons clashed again. In that case, we can simply wait for our friends to finish your troops and come to help us, Neji argued, regaining his balance and starting to sign an offensive technique. That is a poor assumption, the Reaper said mockingly. The male Jonin paused in his chakra shaping with a concerned frown. Why's that? Tenten shot back, expecting a trick. Because of your unfortunate timing, the murderess's smile touched her voice. You see, it is just about time for our scouts and outliers to change shifts. Reinforcements. Hinata cried out in warning, as 6 additional blue Shizokus charged in from the west. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. In response to Hinata's warning, Naruto instinctively split off 20 copies of himself. But before the clones could even move to intercept the returning Shizokus, the grey-clothed captain cut down one duplicate, and began barking new orders. Sergeants, you have Akamaki-san, Hinata-san, and Ino-san, their field commander instructed. Lieutenant, you and I will take Uzumaki-san and his clones. 4 of the new arrivals darted towards Choji, and 1 each joined the opponents already arrayed against Ino and Hinata. Hinata cursed herself silently for not paying closer attention to the outer reaches of her enhanced vision. I should have noticed them just after this fight began, she thought darkly, placing her own hands in the same gesture Naruto had just used. Shadow Clone Jutsu, the youngest Leaf Shinobi present split off a single facsimile. The clone stepped forward, countering 2 fire jutsu with a quick Suiten technique. And behind her, the original Hinata began gathering her chakra in both of her legs, and in her right wrist. Her lower limbs creaked in anticipation, and the key in her arm began to glow visibly. As her other self took a hit from a kunai and exploded, Hinata released both the physical and metaphysical energy in her legs, and rocketed forward, jumping far over the heads of the Shizokus. They all tracked her, and 3 started signing. 8 trigrams, empty palm, the pale beauty shouted as she flipped over them. The Hyuga heiress released the wave of force, aiming it so it would hit the 2 Shizokus on her left. But they were ready for her Byakugan technique. The leftmost sergeant countered with a negative chakra jutsu, sacrificing his energy to weaken her strike. The 2 blue-masked renegades in the middle enclosed Hinata's targets in a pair of stone domes. The diminished empty palm shattered the first barrier, but only cracked the second one before its power was spent. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, the last Shozaku incanted, throwing 6 stars at the Leaf Tokujo. The whirling blades multiplied tenfold, and Hinata frowned at the 60 shuriken flashing towards her. Though still inverted and in mid-air, a seal spread out from the young woman's feet as she moved her arms into position. Byakugan art, protection of the 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Even as she rotated into an upright stance for landing, Hinata's arms darted around with casual speed and accuracy, cutting both the real and chakra stars from the air. At the same time, she focused some of the energy threads on the rocky dome, cutting out large chunks and letting them fall in on the Shizokus, switching their situation from protected to trapped. Her base-level Byakugan showed her the 2 sergeants dodging to the edges of the vault, avoiding her reversal. As Hinata touched down on the wheat field, a concentrated sphere of electricity blasted through the stone, aimed at her head. But this time she was neither wounded nor exhausted, and she avoided the lightning cannon with only a slight shudder of fear, while her 4 attackers continued regrouping. Ino aborted her mind destruction jutsu as a 3rd blue Shozaku moved in behind her. The new renegade had a gladius drawn, and was close enough that Ino worried the 2 seconds her psychic jutsu would leave her open would let allow opponent land a lethal blow. Instead, Yamanaka hopped forward 2 steps, signing a quick quartet of hand seals before bringing her fingers to her mouth. Raiten, Grand Lightning Ball Jutsu, the Chunin blew on her fingertips, sending out a stream of electricity that curled in on itself, forming a 12-foot diameter sphere of power. The wheat stalks burst into flames and were consumed by the reckless attack. The Shozoku whom she had been targeting for insanity was caught by Ino, and collapsed to the ground, his uniform smoldering. But the sergeant still using Ikoi graft avoided the attack, and the Shozoku behind her slunk closer. Ino dismissed the lightning ball, and spun, palming shurikens as she did. The leaf kunoiki's eyes clenched in focus, and she released the throwing stars. The blue-garbed renegade raised his blade and sent chakra to his arms to increase his speed and control. The masked soldier cut the 5 projectiles out of the air easily and started to continue forward. It was only then did he realize why Ino had looked so intent when she threw the shurikens. Shadow Shuriken Jutsu, Ino used the name of the technique as a silent mantra. The second set of stars, hidden by the first, were too close and too unexpected for the Shozoku, but Guki's follower still managed to deflect the 2 throwing knives that would have respectively hit his face and heart. In turn, he took one in the stomach and one in each half of his left arm. The armor in his uniform prevented the gut hit from being lethal or disabling, but his left arm hung limply beside him, nerves pinched and blood flowing. Ino and Hinata both turned their heads in worry as the farmhouse shook, but neither of their lovers seemed to notice, and the building did not collapse, so they quickly returned their focus to their opponents. The red and gray Shizokus regrouped to face the Uzumaki battalion. The captain made a grasping and releasing motion with his left hand, and the lieutenant tossed his gladius to the gray-clad leader before taking a few steps back. The Naruto duplicates eyed them in suspicion, but 3 near the front of the pack grew impatient. They each drew a kunai, the simple implements having been duplicated even though Kitsune was not. Armed and reckless, they charged the kidnappers. The gray Shozoku sliced deep into the first copy's chest, and caught the daggers of the other 2 duplicates on his now paired short blades. And behind him, the red-garbed rogue started signing. Fuyuten, Cyclone Spikes Jutsu, the lieutenant fired the 11 darts past the Narutos engaged in melee, tearing into the front line, destroying 6 of them. The original Grimaced, 8 of his 1-score copies had been killed without injuring either of his opponents or gaining him any significant insights. The teen had been hoping to preserve his chakra for their escape, but instead reluctantly clapped his hands together again. Multi-shadow clone jutsu, he hissed darkly, splitting off another 10 duplicates. This time they did not pause, the new clones darted forward, even as a second of their engaged comrades exploded. The 21 blondes hit the gray Shozoku like a wave, and though he flailed about with blades and feet, trying to hold them back, all but 6 slipped past him. 3 of those turned back, so 9 Narutos were surrounding him. And the rest went after the ninjutsu user. Hyoten, Avalanche Barricade, the red warrior combined his wind and water chakra, and crafted a 5-meter-high wall between himself and the Narutos. But the defense was unstable by design, and began to fall towards the facsimiles. 2 of the clones pushed their comrades out of the way, and 2 more were able to dodge on their own. But the rest were crushed by the collapsing ice. The remaining 4 approached the red Shozoku more carefully, and 3 of the duplicates hemming in the captain broke off to help, while the original Naruto stepped forward to challenge the gray masked leader. The red renegade exhaled from the effort of creating such a large ice jutsu, but he started signing again, and prepared to retreat if necessary. 7 versions of Naruto frowned in unison as they fenced with gray Shozoku. The Gladius had been one of the fox-faced teen's 4A rank weapons during the previous Jonin trials, its length, weight, and straight-edge blade making it a good approximation of a staff blade. So the Uzumaki variants were all more than slightly surprised to catch the captain using tricks with the short blade that were specific to the Hidden Leaf Village. With that realization, 2 of the Narutos suddenly recognized that the red and gray kidnappers had been trying to use the wood scorpion formation, where one ninja used 2 weapons to fend off opponents while his or her partner struck at them with ninjutsu. These guys fight like leaf ninjas, he pondered, are they Konoha missing nin as well, or did my uncle teach them this stuff? Those are leaf moves, another clone angrily vocalized the shared thoughts, did Guki teach you that? Before either of them could answer, all of the Shizokus's communicators suddenly squawked. Captain, a voice familiar to Naruto and Hinata emerged from the radios, I have engaged Neji Hyuga and Tenten. They are currently neutralized. I want all of the sergeants, even those on perimeter duty or on break, to assist you in eliminating the shinobi out there. Yes, ma'am. The gray Shozaku barked nervously, then added, you heard the general. The 4 Shizokas still at the corners of the fence moved forward, and a heartbeat later, 2 more exited the house. The outside guards converged on Choji, and the other 2 split up between Hinata and Ino. Tenten caught the Reaper's trident with her wakizashi, and brought her Ziphos down on the wooden haft of the poleum. But despite the enhanced edge of the leaf-shaped blade and the extra chakra she sent to her arms, Neji's lover failed to even chip the chakra-hardened oak. The Reaper swept the lighter woman into the wall, and Tenten had to disengage to avoid being pinned. Her spear freed, the mummified fighter twisted and jabbed in a single motion, slicing Tenten's t-shirt and lightly cutting the Jonan's skin. Ninja arts, Shuriken Swarm Jutsu, Neji unleashed the entirety of the first pouch of ninja stars Tenten had given him. However, instead of flying straight for the Reaper, they darted and weaved towards her, like hungry mosquitoes. The Reaper loosened the grip of her right hand on the staff of her weapon, and rotated it in a cone, knocking 5 of blades into the wall. But the others hovered around her, waiting for an opportunity. The killer scared, annoyed that she allowed herself to be surrounded. She considered her options, but like the Leaf Ninjas, her actions were limited by both the hostages in the room beside her and the space in the hallway. The first shuriken darted in, and she deflected it. But a second used the opening, burying itself in a hidden stone headband, and a few centimeters into the skin and muscle underneath. She glanced around at the remaining 5 stars, and came to a decision. Raiten, magnetic charge jutsu, she announced without signing. Neji's blades wobbled, and then smacked weakly into her, clinging to the ninja shields covering her, without piercing the metal. The Hyuga Jonin frowned, and his lover stepped forward, hoping to get a strike in while the Reaper recovered from her jutsu. But the guarding rogue brought up her trident, the metal blades only slightly slowed by her fading technique. Even as Neji's weapons dropped to the floor, the Reaper intercepted Tenten's Ziphos and redirected it into the hidden path of the wakizashi. As Tenten tried to untangle her arms, the Reaper rotated, and smacked the younger woman's right temple with the butt end of her trident. The blow was relatively weak, but was enough to make the Leaf Kunoiki's eyes cross momentarily. Guki's general released her trident with her left hand, and pointed it past the stunned Tenten at Neji. Raiten, Thunder Pressure Jutsu, the ninja hunter announced. The white beam exploded towards the Hyuga Jonin, denying him time to adequately defend himself. Suten, Neji shouted, barely keeping the desperation from his voice as he expelled a mass of unformed water chakra. He then slammed his back against the wall as his ki drew in what water there was in air. But the thunder pressure technique was based upon the sonic shock wave, not the electricity itself, so while the mist Neji generated weakened the attack somewhat, it did not slow or deflect the column as it would have most other lightning release arts. The beam clipped Neji's left shoulder, scraped along his chest, barely missed his raised chin, and finally struck the outside wall of the house with a dull thump that lightly rattled the structure. Neji, are you okay? Tenten asked as she righted herself, barely blocking a one-handed thrust to her heart. The Reaper regained her two-handed stance, as the pale-eyed young man lurched away from the wall. I believe in a matter of moments, my entire torso will be bruised, he wheezed, focusing his Byakugan inside his body, and I have 3 cracked bones. But no breaks and no major organ damage. I am lucky she was not able to craft that jutsu properly. Perhaps I was not trying to kill you outright. The Reaper countered smugly, or maybe I just didn't want to risk damaging this house. What do we do? The Leaf Kunoiki asked, fending off a slash at her neck. I'm fighting with 1 A rank weapon and 1 S rank weapon, and she's matching me with still trading ninjutsu with you. And most of your ninjutsu are too destructive to risk in here. Neji considered that. Other than the enfolding dome, the other rotation techniques would have hit Tenten as well, and the dome was more defensive than offensive. He did not think the Reaper would let him easily get into range for the 8 trigrams, 128 palms. And as Tenten had said, most of his other ninjutsu tended to be wide range and destructive. Which again, would put his teammate and also the hostages at risk. As the Leaf Ninjas considered her, the Reaper paused, a smirk invisibly lighting her headband-covered face. She touched 2 fingers to her neck, and her radio beeped in response. Captain, she spoke smugly, I have engaged Neji, Hyuga and Tenten. They are currently neutralized. I want all of the sergeants, even those on perimeter duty or on break, to assist you in eliminating the shinobi out there. Yes, ma'am, the answer returned quickly and crisply. You heard the general. Have you come up with a new plan? She asked her opponents sardonically, and the leaf ninjas grimaced angrily at her. No, the kidnapper prompted. In that case, Griffin's claw, spinning talons. The sword-like tines of the Reaper's trident began to rotate, each along its central axis. As the blades picked up speed, even to Neji's Byakugan, they looked like cylinders instead of blades. The Reaper hopped forward, driving her triplicate drill at Tenten's stomach. Choji had been mildly relieved when the Red Shozaku had been retasked with fighting Naruto, leaving him 4 of the returning scouts instead. 3 of them seemed winded, they were all of the less skilled blue caste, and none of them had an active jutsu that would destroy the earth technique that was protecting his hands from their blades. The new battle had been going well. Akamaki's first attack had knocked down the largest renegade, and he had been slow to stand. 2 of the others had tried to move in closer, but they had quickly learned the partial expansion jutsu was adaptable in its range. Still, they had escaped without any major damage. The last returning scout tried to hit Choji with a fireball jutsu, but his earth-jacketed hands enlarged enough to stop it with only a minor warming of his palms. Then the order came from inside the house, and 6 more Shizokis joined the battle. Choji grimaced as the Grey Warrior instructed 4 of those to assault him. He knew the former perimeter guards had been watching the fight. The large Tokujo considered his human boulder technique, and rejected it because if he aimed at him, he might continue through the fence and into the house. Instead he closed his fists, and swung the expanded dust-em-up jutsu at them like a hammer. But under the dirt and stone, his fingers were secretly signing. Ninja art, pitfall jutsu, Choji said, having maneuvered 6 of his opponents close enough together with his strikes. The ground dropped out from under them, and the 6 blue soldiers plummeted into the sudden hole. He split his hands, and attempted to smash the remaining Shizokas. The first dodged, but the second held her ground. Ninja art, giant's muscles jutsu. Her body appeared to strain against her uniform suddenly, and she caught Choji's huge fist with a grunt of effort. He held fast, and she lifted him into the air, swinging him towards the pit. Akamaki ended the enlarging jutsu, and instead of his fists pulling back towards him, he was reeled into the muscle woman. An instant later, his free arm enlarged again, and collided with the kidnapper's jaw. Is that it? Choji asked the Shozaku as he landed. The last of his opponents did not answer, and the big youth suddenly dove to the side, his instincts screaming. A kunai passed by where his head had been. He glanced back, and saw Guki's warriors emerging from his trap. I thought that would buy me a few more minutes, he lamented softly yet angrily. So he lashed out wildly and rapidly, hoping to push them back and buy himself some more room to think. But when he spun his large, protected limbs in a giant double lariat, one of the blue Shizokas, the first one he had knocked down, burying a shuriken in Akamaki's left shoulder, narrowing missing his neck. Naruto caught the red Shozaku's gladius with kitsune, while a shadow clone caught the gray Shozaku's original sword between scissored kunai. A third Uzumaki launched a kick at the captain's knee, but the gray soldier lifted his leg to avoid the attack, and stomped down hard enough on the clone's ankle that it disintegrated. The fox-faced man took stock. Out of all the clones he had spawned, only 5. 4 now remained, 2 with him sparring with the captain, and 2 trading ninjutsu with the lieutenant. He was finally starting to get a feel for the gray-garbed warrior's fighting style. It was based firmly on the hidden leaf style as he estimated, but had enough differences to give the former Jinchuriki a few surprises. Naruto had also noticed that the red Shozaku had been running short on chakra, but he had failed to prevent the renegade from consuming a food pill. Uzumaki vaguely wished he had one of the restoratives as well, having spent more chakra than he had planned. Lieutenant, the captain barked. Kaiten Blade Jutsu, the red Shozaku intoned, after narrowly avoiding one Naruto's cyclone spikes. His fire chakra flowed into his sword, and the blade burst with an extension of white flames. The heat pushed the original Naruto back, and Uzumaki summoned Kitsune's wind blade. At the same time, one of the clones attempted to block the burning sword, but it seared through his kunai and destroyed the copy in a puff of smoke. Ino tried desperately to escape her currently lone attacker. The newest Shozaku facing her was instead repairing the renegade's injured arm. And from what Ino could tell, was doing a fairly good job of it. Yamanka knew that the opponent she was fighting, the one who had patched herself up temporarily, would be next, and if she could not prevent that, she would be facing 3 more or less healthy enemies. Rotation. Hinata attempted to push her 4 attackers away, but each of them managed to activate the Iron Guard jutsu, and their hardened bodies were not noticeably moved or injured by her attack. She wondered if using a shadow clone had been a good idea, as her reserves were beginning to fade. You can't beat me, Naruto said confidently, Kitsune's wind projection cutting into the fire chakra around the second gladius, and nicking the blade of the first. He had sent the last melee clone to help the other 2 keep the red Shozaku busy. Alone? No, the captain admitted openly, but all I have to do is hold out until one of your friends fails. Then my men will be able to make short work of the other 2. And then you will be alone. Even you do not have the skills and energy to fight 20 warriors, all at least as skilled as a Chunin. There are only 17 of you left, Uzumaki shot back, and even if there were 50 of you, it wouldn't be enough. If I didn't have to converse my chakra to get Nyoko home, he added silently. We will see, the captain said smugly, sweeping aside the staff blade with his borrowed gladius, and slashing the other at Naruto's unguarded stomach. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.